Let's jump into the NBA though, because since we're speaking about money, we found out on Wednesday that the NBA's continuation of their season at the Disney Resort in Orlando is expected to cost more than 150, $150 million. That's an expensive price tag, quite the pretty penny.
Yeah, that's a lot of money, and there no guarantees for all this work that you're doing. FC Dallas, I'm not sure if you saw this, Higgins, but FC Dallas, who's also quarantining in Orlando and also playing at the Disney Wide World of Sports, they had 6 members of their team. It could include coaches also. So 6 members of their organization or their team's traveling party test positive for COVID on Wednesday. And that's a bad sign because that could happen in the NBA. And if you lose 6 of 12 players, it's going to be tough to play.
Yeah, that is. I mean, basketball losing 6 of 12 players. You can technically still field a team, but there's not really any room for substitutions or foul outs at that point.
No, that was eye opening when I saw that. You carry like 13 guys on an NBA roster. Like, oof.
That did just remind me, though, I don't know if you remembered this, of Alabama beating, I want to say Minnesota.
No, it was Oklahoma or it was
I want to say it was Minnesota, but they were playing 3-on-5
yeah.
because of their bench and everyone got ejected. And Colin Sexton basically took over that game and won it for him.
Oh yeah, it was incredible. That was that was an odd thing. They didn't want to burn a red shirt, so they just played with 4 guys. Like
And
I'm
then one guy fouled out and it was down to three, and they
yeah.
still didn't want to burn the red shirt.
That Avery Johnson, man. Wow. But that was an interesting thing. But what really got my attention on Tuesday from the NBA was Damian Lillard's quote. He has doubts about players following the safety protocols in Orlando, and like I get it. These are men with a lot of money, and sometimes they don't always make the greatest decisions ever. But I think when it comes to getting their money, most people put money first and will take the necessary precautions to make sure their paycheck still comes in.
I mean, I would hope that you're right with that, but we have seen these are very young men. They're making a lot of money. It's a rather steep hill that they climb very quickly in terms of financial growth. And like I said, they're very young, and that comes with the natural foolish decisions that young men can make. But Lillard said basically, quote, "My confidence ain't great." And he laughed with that on Wednesday, saying, "My confidence ain't great because you're telling me you're gonna have 22 teams full of players following all the rules when we have 100% freedom, everybody don't follow all the rules. I don't have much confidence, but hopefully it'll be handled to a point where we're not putting everybody at risk or in a dangerous position." I think what he says makes absolute sense. I mean, obviously there's going to be some people that test the limits. There's going to be some potential rule breakers. I mean, when you have 22 teams and you have this many people, it might not necessarily be a player. It could be a coach. It could be a trainer. Someone sneaking out at night just to get an extra snack or something when they shouldn't be doing that. But hopefully it minimizes the risk and it doesn't pose a greater risk to those on the court.
Yeah, no, I mean, he has every right to be nervous about that. I'd be nervous about that too, but these guys are going to get fined and they're going to lose game checks if they break this curfew or, excuse me, if they go outside the bubble and don't do all the necessary things to come back into the bubble. Uh, I like to think that cash rules everything around me. Uh, and I think players think like that too. So if you want to collect your game checks and your sponsorship money and all that, I think you're probably going to follow the rules. But I think Dames raises fair points. Like, that's a lot of people to be keeping an eye on.
Talking about the bubble, though, we did also learn the NBA won't purely restrict a coach from being in Orlando just because of their age. I mean, they are going to evaluate those that are higher risk, but they said solely someone's age will not restrict them from being able to make it to Orlando, which I guess is good if these coaches want to be down there and they don't have other health risks, then that's their choice, I would say. But I would be worried about this. We've talked about the potential for coaches and just the age that is in the coaching system at all ranks of sports, really, and what it could impose to that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to bore our listeners with this, but it's Mike D'Antoni's in a tough spot. He's coaching with 0 years left on his deal. He is an older coach, and he'd like to continue coaching for his livelihood. So, what do you do in that situation? This guy has to go out there, and I'm not saying that the Rockets aren't going to resign. I mean, it doesn't seem like they'll resign him. Maybe another team will find interest, but what if he goes out there and wins the championship? Well, then it's going to be tough for the Rockets to can him. Like, so if you're a guy like Mike D'Antoni, like, of course you want to be there. Alvin Gentry, another older coach, like, you have the best young team. Maybe not the best, but you have one of the top young teams in the league. You don't think that guy wants to be there as they're making their playoff push? Like, there are a lot of reasons that these coaches work their whole lives to get to this point to be head coaches in the NBA, and they don't want it to go away because now they're too old. So I definitely understand why the NBA is saying that. I do think everyone should have health at top of mind. But Mike D'Antoni's a grown man; he can make his own decision.
I think D'Antoni is a very interesting name to bring up, and I think he definitely is feeling his heat to the fire because we have seen Houston Rockets general manager Daryl Morey make drastic changes to that roster, to the coaching staff, and do what he needs to do because he thinks they have the necessary tools to win and they just need a few different pieces. So I wouldn't be surprised if it is all in this year on D'Antoni, and if that doesn't happen, maybe they do try to move on with Harden and Westbrook unless D'Antoni shows something very promising in this playoff scenario. But it's gonna be tough for some of these coaches that are dealing with some off the court issues, whether it be their age or their health, what have you, to battle that and focus on a season during this coronavirus epidemic. But Brett, we talked a little bit about the TBT. Let's get back into it though, because there were a lot of details that were released. I mean, it's starting on Saturday, July 4th, and the prize pot, it's been bumped up. It used to be $1 million. It's $2 million this year.
Yeah, it's been 2 million for a few years now, but you're right. It started off as $1 million prize pot. It has since doubled. All the games are going to be on ESPN. I want to say for the fifth year in a row, but definitely the fourth year in a row. Um, and what they're doing this year, that's obviously different for Corona reasons, is they're doing a quarantine bubble, similar to the NBA. All 24 teams will be quarantining in Columbus, Ohio, and playing all their games there. Kind of stinks. I liked how they were, as part of the fan voting, they were bringing the teams closer to like some home arenas so their fans could come, which was a fun little aspect of this little tournament. Um, but it's more important to have the tournament go on. So,
Yeah, they
uh,
used to do a March Madness kind of styled locations for their opening rounds, and then they'd kind of meet at a central location. Real quick, just mentioning that pot again, Brett. The $2 million is important because not all of these players are in the NBA or even currently professional basketball players still. I mean, Eric Devendorf with Syracuse, he's a coach.
yeah, he was a coach. He is not playing professionally. That's a great point.
So
Uh,
that 2 million means a lot to these players. They're not necessarily getting that salary that you think of with a professional basketball player, and that's why that bump from 1 million to 2 million was such a big deal because these guys they really want that prize money. They need that for various reasons.
Oh, definitely. I mean, the amount of G League guys playing in this and overseas guys, it definitely helps. And It's cool because it's winner take all. So like the winning team divides up that 2 mil. It's basically predetermined. You can see how much everyone's going to take home if they win on the website if you go there, if that's really interesting to you. But just some things to know if you're going to bet on this, which they announced today on Wednesday. They did it just for the podcast, just for us, Higgins.
Ooh,
They
very
said,
nice.
we're going to allow betting on the TBT this year with FanDuel. They're going to be our official partner. We're going to have daily fantasy basketball on the TBT. We're going to have gambling odds, and they said, and we're going to let the Next Best Bet podcast talk about it. So that was really nice of them.
Well,
Um,
Oregon doesn't have FanDuel, so I may have to ask in a favor from you or someone that I know that's in one of the states that FanDuel does some betting, because I would like to put some money on some Boeheim's Army. They look like they got a pretty good team this year. I mean, we mentioned Devendorf. Chris McCullough is a great name. Malachi Richardson, very talented guard who was with the Kings for a little bit. But they're also facing some other very talented crews. I mean, Ohio State, Aaron Kraft was a thorn in the side for many Syracuse teams during his tenure as a Buckeye. So I'm sure there are many in Orange that will not be happy to see him there. But these teams are always very interesting, and I'm very excited to see this tournament again.
yeah, a lot of fun. And again, things to note if you are going to bet or play daily fantasy on this. The Elam ending. All games end on a made basket. It's not time at the end. It's the exact same thing that you saw in the All-Star game this year. So if you enjoyed watching the NBA All-Star game this year, you're going to love this tournament where winner takes home $2 million and every game comes down to a made basket. It's pretty cool. It was developed by like some professor at Ball State and named it after himself, but it's a good idea. You add a certain amount of points onto the winning team's score when there's about 3 minutes left in the game, and it's to calculate matches the correct winning percentage as if the game just finished out. But what it eliminates is all the fouling and dead time at the end of basketball games. You're just playing because both teams need to score to win.
Are you
So
sure it's named after a professor? Because I assumed it was named after Jason Elam, a kicker, and maybe it was just about someone kicking game-winning field goals, and you have to make a game-winning field goal in basketball to win the game.
that is a hilarious stretch, but yes, I'm positive the guy Elam named it after himself. And another thing that was kind of cool that's since made its way into March Madness that started in the TBT was you now see these teams they celebrate by putting their like team name farther up in the bracket, and that was a cool thing that started out of TBT. Lots of cool innovations. I'm excited to see what comes out of it this year, but like you said, it's definitely something I'll be watching. I look forward to betting on it, and yes, I'll be a homer rooting for Boeheim's Army.
It's also always nice to see the teams move their own names forward because each team does it a little differently. Sometimes it's whoever had the best game of the day. Sometimes it's the entire team doing it together. Sometimes it's the coach doing it. Every team kind of does that a little bit differently. Two other teams I did want to note about the TBT though. There is Team ALS Challenge and Playing for Jimmy V. So there's two charity teams as well within this bracket this year. So making it interesting. And they have some notable players as well. I mean, Playing for Jimmy V has Hashim Thabit, Haywood Highsmith, and Josh Perkins.
Yeah, Highsmith meant a cup of coffee with the Sixers, and Josh Perkins was in summer league with the Hornets last year. But most notably, three Final Fours with Gonzaga. So pretty good there. And for ALS Challenge, you got Casper Ware, who played with the Sixers, was traded to Brooklyn, waived, but played with the Sixers. Malcolm Thomas, who spent a few years in the NBA, and Tyrese Rice. For big college basketball fans, you'll remember him at Boston College. He could shoot it from just about anywhere, and he's one of the top players in Europe right now. So he'll be a name to watch for sure.
Absolutely. Plenty of basketball news. And Saturday, after the hot dog eating contest, may just be tuning back and forth between the TBT and the Rocket Mortgage Classic for PGA Golf because we're going to get into that in a little bit, but I have a lot of golf bets coming up.